Welcome to Montjuic Swimming Pool, where it's the finals of the men's 3-meter springboard contest. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve McFarland with Cynthia Potter. Yesterday, the men were diving for position, and two of them really had the inside track today.
Absolutely. China's Tan Liangde qualified first yesterday, and he will be diving last today. He's been in this position before, and he hasn't been able to capitalize on it. In 1988, he was the top qualifier, but Greg Louganis was able to come from the third position and beat him. In 1991, in the World Championships, Tan qualified first again, but Kent Ferguson came to beat him. But Tan's top competition today will come from American Mark Lenzi. Mark qualified second. He will dive just before Tan today in the contest. They are both athletic. They both have very difficult dives. It'll come down to who can out-finesse the other one.
Well, yesterday, everyone's attention was on Kent Ferguson. What happened?
Kent had a terrible day in the qualifying rounds yesterday, particularly in the fifth round. He missed the dive just awfully, but he came back and was able to qualify just by 2 points. He will dive first today as the last qualifier. He's not only set up a challenge for himself, but this will be a struggle to see if he can take home a medal of any color.
Can he medal?
I think he can, but he's going to have to establish that from the very beginning. He'll have to be in timing and rhythm and show that in their compulsory dives.
Stay with us. It's the men's 3-meter springboard final just ahead. We're back at Montjuic Swimming Pool, where the crowd is ready to see the action of the Olympic 3-meter final for the men. Steve McFarland and Cynthia Potter are here, and we're taking a look at Kent Ferguson, whose frame of mind was somewhat questionable yesterday in the preliminaries. As his thoughts seemed to wander, he lost his focus and was thinking of such things as Dan O'Brien, who failed to make the Olympic team, and what consequences not making the finals would have on him. But he collected himself enough to be here, and now he's ready to do his first dive of the finals. Back 2 1/2 back dive pike, 1.8 degree of difficulty.
His coach said we would know from the very beginning whether he was going to be relaxed and able to handle the competition today, and I would say that was a little bit of a nervous start. This is not one of his best back dives. It's a good back dive. He touches beautifully at the top, looks back, but the entry is not as solid. He has a little bit of arch as he goes in the water here and just slides past vertical. I don't think that's a miss at all. It's a nice dive, but Kent can do this dive for 9s and 10s. So we're looking for him to stay steady and improve a little bit on that dive in the first 5 rounds particularly.
There you saw the scores, 7.5 and 8s for Kent's first dive. Now, Davide Lorenzini from Italy diving in his first Olympic final, a forward 1 1/2 somersault pike, 1.6 degree of difficulty.
Davide had a beautiful hurdle off the springboard, and he reaches up and goes way above the 5-meter platform. This is a pretty dive. He would score 8s and above if he would stretch his legs a little more in the air. He needs to straighten those knees and really stretch. Doesn't have the prettiest stretch in the world, and a good comparison would be with Kent Ferguson, who went just before him. It's a good dive, but it doesn't show a lot of grace and beauty because of the lack of stretch.
Cynthia, we talked about diving first in the finals. Kent having to come out and really make a statement to the judges. Of course, the judges are all from neutral countries here. No country in the final has a judge on the panel. Your impression of Kent's dive was that it was a little weak. So is he not making the statement that's going to be required?
Well, I don't think he's totally off. I'm going to have to watch a forward hurdle before I can probably assess that. But I thought that was a little bit of a nervous start, being the first diver in the finals. That's certainly understandable, but he can't go through the finals like that nervously and expect to be in contention for a medal.
That was Joachim Andersson from Sweden doing the back dive pike. We're seeing a lot of back takeoffs as the first dive. Why is that?
Well, the divers can choose any dive they want to do on the first one as long as they're within the degree of difficulty maximum. They can't go over 7.6 on these first 5 dives. So a lot of divers start out backwards. They don't have to contend with the hurdle and some nervousness that they might be experiencing. Some people feel like they can't walk down the end of the board when they're nervous.
All right, Mark Rourke now from Canada doing his first dive. It's a back dive pike.
Mark Rourke has had so much experience diving. He's been diving since he was about 9 years old competitively, and he's 23 years old. So he's been at it for a long time, and he's very steady. He loves to train. He likes to do lots and lots of dives. His back dive is very nice, just a little bit of arch in diving. We want to stay real flat and not arch our back.
And the scores are pretty much consistent with the rest of the divers thus far, 7s to 8s, basically the range the judges have been seeing at this portion of the contest. Now Michael Murphy from Australia, 18-year-old from Brisbane, is doing his forward 1 1/2 somersault pike.
Michael Murphy did such a good job in the qualifying rounds. He has a beautiful toe point, and I think he displays that on every dive he does. He doesn't flatten his feet and forget about the stretch. And as he goes up into the air, we see a nice tight pike position. Now his feet came apart a little bit, and if the judges saw that, they'll probably take off a 1/2 point. That's the minimum they could deduct, because in scoring diving, we go by 1/2 point increments.
And the scores again in the 7 to 7 1/2 range. Edwin Junjans now, the diver from the Netherlands, doing the forward dive straight. Not too many divers selecting this position in the forward group.
That's right, Steve. It's a very simple front dive. Used to be called a swan dive a long time ago, but we call it a front dive straight now because we don't want to indicate that an arch is acceptable. And you can see that is a very straight position. He drops his arms right there. That's a break in position somewhat. He was not rotating fast enough to go in vertically, and that drop of the arms indicates that.
And 6 1/2, no 6 1/2, excuse me, we have 7s and 8s there from the judges, and that they did not take off for that break of position. Dimitri Saltin now from the unified team doing the forward 1 1/2 somersault.
Oh, that's a nice rip going into the water. Saltin is known for his platform diving, and he really knows how to go in the water without making a splash. And the transition from springboard to platform is not necessarily a difficult one. It's sometimes even more difficult to go from the platform to the springboard because the springboard requires so much more in terms of timing and rhythm. But this is a nicely timed dive. He didn't get his feet on the end of the diving board, though.
Saltin, an interesting story. He's lucky to be here. He was involved in a knifing incident in St. Petersburg back home where he was stabbed 4 times in the stomach, but he was lucky really to recover and is diving here representing the unified team. Now representing Mexico, Jorge Mondragon doing the back dive pike.
That was the best back dive I've seen so far. The reason why that dive was so good is the distance from the diving board was perfect. It was about 2 feet from the diving board, within that 1 to 3 feet range. Beautiful dive. You were starting to say something.
When we think of diving, we usually think of the top 4 countries, and Mexico has always had a tradition of being great in diving. And why is that, do you suppose?
Well, I think one of the reasons is that they have divers that train in the United States quite a bit, but they're very good friends with the coaches in the United States and the divers, and they take a lot of instruction from that. Their coaches study U.S. tapes, and they also learn at camps and clinics.
Stetsenko now from the unified team. That was a forward 1 1/2 somersault pike.
Stetsenko does a beautiful dive in the air, but as he gets to the water, he bends a little bit at the waist before he enters the water, and that's called a premature save. Divers bend at the waist. They do lots of somersaults and arching underneath the water to actually pull a dive back to vertical.
You know, he has an interesting story as well. He lives in Kiev near Chernobyl, and when the winds are blowing from Chernobyl, they don't even train, even though they train indoors. He claims that it has affected his stamina, and he has actually changed his list from a reverse 3 1/2 to a reverse 2 1/2 somersault tuck, having to overcome a lot of difficulties. Now, Alvin Keelot, forward 1 1/2 somersault pike.
Now, this is a diver that I think could be a medalist here today. He is one of the steadiest divers. He's 30 years old, and he just doesn't miss dives. He's really very graceful, very fluid in the air. I would compare his diving to Kent Ferguson, although he's not quite as artistic as Kent, but he just doesn't miss. And, of course, we know Kent Ferguson missed dives in the qualifying rounds. That's a beautiful front 1 1/2 somersault pike. And his hurdle was nice. He had a long step out of the hurdle. He reaches up above his head, demonstrates the closed pike position, reaches for the water, grabs his hands for the rip.
30-year-old from Germany making his 3rd appearance in the Olympic Games, and there you see the scores. Mark Lenzi now doing a forward 1 1/2 somersault tuck. This is the top qualifier from the United States yesterday, and an excellent diver who has terrific acrobatic skills.
A nice way to start the contest for Mark. He has a big following here. The fans really like him, but they've been very nice to the Americans the entire time. His feet weren't on the end of the springboard. Now, if he put his feet on the end of the springboard, he might even go up higher, although Mark is very strong, and he already jumps very high. So if he would put his feet on the end of the board, he'd go up another foot in the air. Now, let's see where his feet land. A good 3 inches back from the end of the springboard. It's more flexible on the end, and it will assist the diver in going up higher if they utilize the entire length of the springboard.
There are the scores for Mark Lenzi, 8, 8 1/2, excellent score range. Their divers are going to be doing the first 5 dives, have a degree of difficulty limitation of 9.5. So you're going to see some interesting mix of dives here as we watch Tan Lianda from China.
That's right, I misquoted that degree of difficulty maximum. It's 9.5, not 7.6. I was thinking about platform. He really knows how to go in the water vertically, whether he's fast or slow off the springboard. And I thought this dive was a little bit fast, actually. He has his legs come up beautifully on the beginning, but it looks like he's almost at the vertical position before he comes out of the dive. But he holds his legs very well. He is very good at saving that compensatory action under the water. And in this case, he keeps his head back going underneath the water and pulls his knees so that he doesn't go past vertical. You can't see that right now, but there's a lot going on underneath.
Well, those are, again, excellent scores after the first round of diving here at Montjuic Swimming Stadium. The day is a wonderful afternoon. It's a bit cooler than yesterday, and there is a slight breeze coming in as we see the results so far. Now, are you surprised to see Kent Ferguson in second at this part of the contest?
No, I'm really not. He started out with a back dive, which is a 1.8 degree of difficulty. That's a little bit higher than those forward 1.5s we saw. And he loves to come from behind. His favorite position is not being the favorite. He feels that's a lot of pressure, and he doesn't accept that very well. So he would like to be thought of as someone who has to prove something. I can show you all that I can do this.
Right. So the more significant standings are going to be after the 5th round when everyone has done their total degree of difficulty. Inward dive straight now for Kent Ferguson, who has a tall mountain to climb. None of the points, of course, carried over from the preliminary or qualifying rounds. So everyone starts with a clean slate. They were only diving for position, And this position is not the one he expected to be in, certainly. He's going to do a 1.7 degree of difficulty.
That was an inward dive in the straight position, and I would say his nerves are lessening at this point. That looked smoother, that looked in better timing and rhythm with the springboard. I don't think it was jerky. He reaches up, sets the dive. Perfect balance, reaches for the water. Drills the entry vertically. That's a great dive. He looks good and he looks steady.
He does, that's right. Those two back takeoffs that he's done very well thus far, 7.5 to 8.5 are the judges' scores. Of course, the high and the low score are eliminated in diving, as we're looking at Lenzi, who's preparing to do his inward 1 1/2 somersault pike. Just a word that the scores that are remaining are added together, multiplied times the degree of difficulty, and then multiplied times 0.6, which is the standardizing factor for a judge's score.
Lenzi just did an inward 1 1/2 somersault pike. It's a little bit higher degree of difficulty, 2.1. than the 1.6 and the 1.8 that we've been seeing. So he'll pick up some points, even though this isn't going to score all that high. It won't be in the 8 range because he over-rotates on the bottom of this. You see his feet go past vertically.
Lenzi now looking for his scores, and the 5.5 from the Spanish judge. It was certainly the lowest score thus far in the contest. The scoring range is going to be from the good to very good range. Again, the good considered 6.5 to 8. The very good range, 8.5 to 10. Now, Anderson from Sweden.
Anderson did a very good job of holding his legs vertically after he touched. If he had dropped those legs after he went up and touched his toes, he would have ended up short and not made the rotation. It's only a half of a somersault. But he reaches up, then he touches his toes at the apex of the dive, and he's very good at holding those legs there and not arching. He'll be rewarded for that. Although his lines are not as lean and nice as some of the other divers. He's a little bit heavier.
6.5 to 7s were the score range for Anderson from Sweden. And now Mark Rourke, the Canadian diver who is a graduate of the University of Alabama, representing Canada here in the finals.
Mark does a nice clean entry into the water. The judges are really looking for verticalness going into the water and not a lot of splash. Those two items put together. But he loses his feet. They come apart right at the top there. See those feet just barely separated at the top of that dive. His ankles slip every now and then. That's not uncommon, particularly on twisters, but the judges will see it on compulsory dives and deduct for that because a diver in control would not do that.
71.58 are the total points for his two dives. Now, Michael Murphy from Australia doing the back dive pike. Most of the divers to get the 9.5 total degree of difficulty basically choose the same dives, Cynthia?
They stay very consistent in those dives because there's not a whole lot of combinations that add up to exactly 9.5. So you find they all have to demonstrate 5 different groups of dives. So they end up doing a lot of the same ones. They may be just slightly varied, but the back and reverse dive are all done. Nobody's doing anything other than a back or reverse dive. They may not do it in the same position. This is a back dive pike. We may see a couple of back dives straight, which would carry 1/10 degree of difficulty more, but then they'll back off somewhere else to get that 9.5 total over 5 dives.
6s basically for the young Australian. Edwin Youngejans now from Netherlands doing the back dive and pike position.
Edwin very much needs to stay steady and not lose ground on his compulsories. He has trouble pointing his feet, and of course the judges look for that in those required dives especially. Does a great job of going in the water without a splash. Now he's good at that. He does that wonderfully on his optional dives, the hard ones. but sometimes on his compulsories, see those feet were a little separated and flat coming off the springboard, and he has an arch in his back. Edwin also has a tendency to do that, but his optional dives are much better, so he just doesn't want to lose ground here.
Scores 7 and 7.5 for Edwin Yunyans, who trains in the United States, but after this Olympics, he's moving to Australia to train with Steve Foley. Dimitri Saltin now from the unified team. He's doing the back dive pike as well, 1.8 degree of difficulty. He's been a real wonderkind of a sort when the Soviet Union was around. At age 12, he was their national champion, and we all knew then that the Soviet Union had very strong divers, much older than he.
That's right, and 6 years later, we see him in the Olympic Games, and he just has been a nice diver for a long time on both the platform and the springboard, and that's unusual these days because so many people specialize and dive one or the other and spend all their time on that apparatus, but he's very versatile. That was a nice back dive in the pike position. He started to over-rotate just a little, but pulled it back in. He does a save underwater, too, and talk about what the divers do underneath the surface of the water.
As you look at him in the hot tub, and I know that it's only about 88 degrees out here, and we're kind of baking under the sun. Getting in a hot tub doesn't seem like the thing you'd want to do, but for these divers, getting in that hot water is a relaxing cool down, actually, and mentally and physically, and as they walk back, there is a room in the back where all of the divers seem to congregate and unwind. Some of them choose to read or listen to music. As we're looking at the judges' scores for Salton's dive, 7 and 1/2 and 8, and the official block there where all of the computation of the scores are done and the judges sit and watch the dive. Now Jorge Mondragon from Mexico doing the reverse dive pike.
Water. Is a real pretty diver to watch. He's small, he's slight, he only weighs 150 pounds. But this dive goes out a little bit too far away from the springboard. He takes off and pushes out with his hips. And then as he looks back for the water, it's just a little bit of arch in his back right there. He straightens it out before he goes in the water. But he should probably have a half-point deduction for that distance.
No stranger to Olympic competition, Mondragon is making his third appearance. In '84, he was 9th on springboard, and in '88, he was 6th. Now Stutsenko from the unified team doing the back dive in pike. It's just really amazing to me, getting back to the Chernobyl incident, how it has affected certainly that wonderful country, but also it's had an impact on people like Valerie here who's diving today.
That's right, and even though they train indoors,
right,
they still take days off when the wind is blowing in a certain direction. He doesn't look like he's been taking a lot of days off. That was a beautiful back dive. His feet came apart before he left the springboard. He double bounced it just a little bit, and the judges have been talking about those double bouncing back takeoffs, and I wonder if they might not deduct just a little bit. That was probably an 8 dive, so if they received 7s, I think they did deduct a little bit.
Well, let's talk about the judges for a second. Before they come out here and judge, they actually meet and talk about the deductions and the things that they must look for, so it's not, they are somewhat educated as to the flaws to observe here.
They have meetings regularly to talk about the things that keep the sport of diving moving in a direction they would like to see it going in positively and safely, so that they don't have incidents and that double bounce backwards is one of the things that they've been discussing extensively and intensively. And I noticed that the Chinese have limited the amount of double bouncing that they've been doing, and they've really been working on that. This is a beautiful back dive straight. I said watch out for Albin Kielot. He is one of the prettiest divers in the contest, and he doesn't miss dives. I think he's a medal contender. He's from Germany, and he's always been able to be right around the top 4 or 5 divers. Hasn't always received a medal, but he's so mature now, and this back dive really displays those lines that he has. With a little better toe point, I think he would rival Kent Ferguson on compulsory dives.
Well, at age 30, he also has his own story. He was recovering from a motorcycle accident and didn't even train in 1990. The crowd is here, and they're behind the young American born on the 4th of July, Mark Lenzi. He's going to do the back dive straight, 1.9.
We've seen so many back dives done in the pike position, and Mark elects to do it straight. He's always done that since I first saw Mark dive. He does very nice positions. Look at he hits that cross right off the board up in the air, and he holds his arms there, displaying the control and the balance in the air, closes up, and rips the entry. He made a nice sound going in the water. It sounds as if Velcro is being torn apart or a piece of paper is being ripped, and that's part of what the judges look for, as well as the verticalness. A rip without vertical, no, they shouldn't reward that, but with the verticalness, yes.
Good scores, the first 9 this portion of the contest, so the ice has been broken for the judges. They like what they see, and that's a good sign for the rest of the competitors, especially Tan Leanda, who now is doing the reverse dive pike.
Now, I talked about who's going to out-finesse who, and part of that will be displayed in the board work. The ability to land on the diving board smoothly without making a lot of noise, and even though we couldn't hear it on the replay, Tan stomped the end of the diving board a little bit, and he won't go up as high because he flattens his feet just before he takes off. The dive is very good. Nice high, good execution in the air, but you see those feet were flattened before he landed on the diving board. He should extend his toes into the board and then push through the ankles as he leaves the board. So even though that's going to receive very high scores, it could have been better.
There are the scores and the results after 2 rounds. Leanda is in first, Keylott in second, Ferguson is dropped back to third. Ferguson, of course, is just 6 points behind Leanda, and Lenzi is 1 point behind, less than 1 point behind Kent Ferguson. So everybody's bunched up there in the top 4, and that is a good sign for Kent Ferguson, who struggled early yesterday. Yesterday, an abbreviated format made a big difference.
That's right.
They didn't do all their dives.
They didn't do all their dives. They only did 7 out of 11 that they're doing today, and I think that abbreviated format hurt Kent a little bit, right, because it put more pressure on each dive he did.
Now he's going to do the forward dive in straight position. The only other diver to do this dive so far was Edwin Jans from the Netherlands. Kent is going to do the forward dive straight. A 1.6 is the degree of difficulty.
This is a beautiful illustration of his elegance and grace. Absolutely marvelous.
10s?
No, I think it may receive some 9s, though. I didn't see a whole lot wrong with that dive. I think maybe he could have gone up in the air a little bit higher. Should be a little bit more aggressive taking off. He played the dive a little bit safe, that's all. But this position is the best I've ever seen. He closes up a little bit early because he may feel that he's moving, but he doesn't go past vertical. The entry is flawless.
Scores not 10s, not 9s either, but 8.5s, and those are certainly good scores and will keep him in the hunt at this point of the contest. Now, Lorenzini now from Italy is going to do the forward 1 1/2 somersault with 1 twist, a 2.1 degree of difficulty.
Twisting and somersaulting dives, and I can understand why. You know, they start off and they see a lot of plain dives, so to speak, right, a lot of back dives, a lot of front dives, and then they see this, which is fairly complicated in the first 5 rounds. A forward 1 1/2 somersault with a twist. He actually initiates a 1/2 somersault, does 1 full twist, turns around, looks at the water, and goes in head first. It's a nice dive. It's not a great dive. His form, his feet and his legs would improve the scores if he would stretch more.
Right, and that explains that. Now, Joachim Anderson from Sweden doing the forward 1 1/2 somersault pike.
Well, he is from the family of Anderson. His head was down in the somersault, and he had trouble recovering for the entry. It goes past vertical a little bit, and really can't miss a required dive. or the entry on a required dive, when you're able to see the water the whole way around, he should really be able to line this up. But look at his head position. As he reaches for the water, he's looking through his legs rather than out in front of him. He should reach a little bit more over his head towards the other end of the pool. This goes over just a little.
And this is a diver whose strengths lie more in the optional rounds than in this first section of the contest. So 6.5 may be scores that he's accustomed to at this point. Mark Rourke now from Canada doing the reverse dive pike.
Mark is studying engineering. I'd say he's pretty well figured out the mechanics
Yes,
of the
he has.
springboard, but
He's probably caught the board better than any of the other competitors in the contest.
he really has. He's been real soft on the end of the diving board, which means that he's not making a lot of noise, and that indicates again that he's stretching his feet well out of the hurdle into the board before he takes off. He had a little bit of trouble grabbing his hands and going in the water without a lot of splash, so probably won't see a whole lot of 7.5.
For you golfers out there, catching the springboard is like being in the groove on your swing in golf. It is something that comes and goes at times, and if it's with you at the Olympics, you know that it is perfect timing. Michael Murphy now from Australia doing the inward reverse dive pike, a 1.9.
Michael Murphy's toe point is really impeccable. You know, I think even when he has a lousy dive, which this was a mediocre dive, his toe point is the last thing the judges see, and sometimes they sort of forget some of the mistakes he makes. He grabbed onto his feet in the air and held onto them to try and pull his feet up into that pike. He was stuck. He wasn't making the rotation.
7.5 and 1/8. Of course, the high scorer and the low scorer are eliminated, so he nets 7s on that dive. Edwin Jans now from Holland doing the reverse dive pike as well, 1.9.
You know, Edwin did everything right in that dive until he got to the water. And then he grabbed his hands a little bit early and they came apart before he got underneath the water. And this is really a nice dive in the air. Even though Edwin doesn't point his toes beautifully most of the time, they're stretched pretty well here for him. He just doesn't have that naturally, but he's going to grab his hands early. We see way up above the water, but they come apart right as he goes in the water, and that's why he makes that big splash.
And there you see explaining to his coach exactly what Cynthia just said. As he climbs into the hot tub trying to explain, well, I missed my hands. Divers and coaches communicate with their hands quite a bit, and most of the communication is something that's acceptable in public display, but later on, sometimes not. 6.5 and 7s were the scores for the diver from the Netherlands. Dimitri Saltin now from the unified team doing the reverse dive pike, 1.9 degree of difficulty.
Oh, that's a great reverse dive. The control was absolutely flawless. You know, this is an exercise where you can really display mechanics in diving and the basics. He reaches up above his head. His legs come up perfectly. He touches at the apex of the dive. You see that he's not falling towards the water when he touches in that pike position. He grabs his hand, keeps an absolutely straight and vertical line going in the water. No arch in his back.
Scores 7.5 and 8s for Saltin. Excellent scores, and will certainly keep him closer to the top. Now Mondragon doing the forward 1 1/2 somersault in pike position.
He has a fan club here.
He does, doesn't he?
He does.
I think all of the Mexicans are very well received here.
They are, and they're well liked because they're nice people to begin with.
Yeah.
This isn't a dynamic dive. It's a nice dive. I probably would want him to stretch his knees a little bit more in that pike for the 8s that are so necessary to go out in the lead on the compulsory dive. But it's a solid dive. Just needs a little more stretch to it.
7.5 and 8s are the scores that he will net. Good scores for the diver from Mexico. Valery Stetsenko now from the unified team. He's doing the reverse dive pike.
He had one foot in front of the other throughout that dive. It looked like his ankles had slipped a little bit as he touched his toes. See if we can see this on the replay. This is, again, getting very critical, but this is what the judges look for. You can see both legs there as he's coming down. We're at a perfectly profile, so he's twisted just a little bit. I thought it might be a case of just one foot in front of the other, but he's a little bit twisted.
The judges didn't quite catch all of that, Cynthia. They don't have your eagle eye, I don't think. That was 7.5 and 8 from the judges. Good scores for Stutsenko. And now Kielot from Germany doing the same dive, the reverse dive pike.
Kielot's a master at going in the water vertically, especially on these required dives, because he was in trouble in that hurdle. His arms are behind him. Look as he lands on the diving board where his arms are. Wait there, behind him instead of in front of him in that spread out position above his shoulders. But he goes way up in the air. It just doesn't seem to affect the dive a whole lot. And most of the time when you miss the hurdle, there's a lot of compensation going on. And watch again. As he lands on the board, his arms are way back there. Okay? Alvin has radar. He just knows where vertical is very well. Nice toe points going in the water.
And you see the scores. He did receive a 9 from the Great Britain judge. The other scores were as low as 7.5, so you may have heard a few whistles from the crowd. Mark Lenzi, also another popular diver here, doing the reverse dive in straight position.
There's that nice straight position that Mark displays again. He did that back dive straight. We just saw Alvin do a reverse dive in the pike position. They're the same dive. They're just different positions. And Mark's dive carries 1/10 more degree of difficulty. Right there. There's the position. Now he drops his arms just a little bit in the air. That indicates that he's a little stuck. He's not rotating as quickly as he would like to be. So that's almost a miss for Mark. He's capable of getting 9s on this dive all the time. But he's going to drop his arms just a little bit, or I think he would get those 9s, because everything else was impeccable. Boy, is he up in the air.
The scores are mostly 8s for Mark Lenzi, who is a feisty competitor, not quite introspective like the other team members. He likes to really pay attention to the scores. Now Leonda from China.
I noticed that Leonda's having trouble catching the board today. He's not very smooth in his hurdles. The dives look real good. And he's really controlling things beautifully, but he's flattening his feet early. I talked about this on the last dive he did. This is a reverse 1.5 with a half twist. It's really a pretty dive to watch because he takes off and does that half twist in the first quarter of his dive, then comes around and looks at the water. It's a beautiful dive, but it actually could score even better if he wouldn't flatten his feet like that and make that noise before he takes off from the diving board. It really sounds pretty loud. The judges are aware of that.
The scores are way up there. 9s mostly from the judges, and as you would expect, Tom Leonda maintains his lead. Alvin Kielot from Germany second. Mark Lenzi from the United States now moved into third. Salton, Lorenzini. Ferguson is in 6th place with a score of 120.24. He is actually about 9 points out of the third position, bronze medal position, and almost 23 points out of the gold medal position after we've completed 3 rounds of dives. But again, the first 5 rounds have a solid degree of difficulty ceiling, and we really have to gauge where we stand at that point of the contest.
Well, that's, some people say, and I agree, that that's where it all starts.
Right.
Jockeying for position a little bit in the first 5 rounds, those compulsories, and then the spinning and twisting starts, the degree of difficulty, that can make a difference. So we're just sort of sparring right now, And I think if he's within 10 or 15 points of the leaders after the first 5 dives, he's definitely in contention for a medal.
And we should also point out that his 5th dive is his highest degree of difficulty dive at 2.5. This is a reverse dive pike at 1.9, so he's still within distance of where he wants to be.
He missed that hurdle a little bit. I mean, Ronnie O'Brien had told me, his coach earlier, that, you know, we're going to know how relaxed he is from the way his hurdles look. And he just didn't quite put his feet on the end of the diving board there. It still may show that he's a little bit nervous, although he likes to be in this position. He doesn't want to be the front runner at this point. And he's not, but he's within distance. That's a great reverse dive pike, but the balance on the end of the diving board wasn't perfect.
7.5 and 8, 163 and change for Ferguson from the United States. Now Lorenzini from Italy, the back dive pike.
Was not a good back dive pike. We've been seeing dives for 7s, 8s, and a couple of 9s here and there, and this dive fades away too far from the springboard. Right in the beginning, he jumps back. He's already 3 feet from the springboard as he goes up in the air from the touch. So the further he falls, the further he goes away from the springboard, and he just doesn't have the control because of that distance.
And the scores are lower, 6s and 6.5s. Now, Joachim Andersson from Sweden, inward 1 1/2 somersault pike, 2.1.
I think he is such a good technician. I really feel like he might be able to do his dives a little more effectively and efficiently if he was just a little thinner. He certainly knows where he's going, and his mechanics are solid. But when you look at the rest of the field, they seem to be a little bit leaner and longer. He certainly, you know, he's not going to get any taller probably, but he could maybe lose a couple of pounds, and he might look a little better in the air. His stretch is sufficient, but he could move a little quicker if he was a little bit lighter possibly. He weighs almost 170 pounds.
And scores 6.5s and 7s for a young man who does like the food at the Olympic Village. Understand that it is a popular place where he does frequent. Mark Rourke now. Forward 1 1/2 somersault, 1 twist.
Mark Rourke has done every dive within perfect distance of the diving board. He's in good balance as he lands on the end of the board, and that distance is a result of that balance. You see, he puts his feet right on the end of the board before he leaves it. He has a little trouble with his feet in the air. He seems to cross them every now and then. He might should get some Velcro for his ankle. But the dive is solid. Full twisting 1 1/2.
Well, he is an engineering student at University of Toronto. That might be a project that he will be working on in the near future.
How to attach Velcro to the ankles for divers. Wonder if that would be allowed.
Yeah, we had the slang term is he lost his feet. We hear diving coaches and divers refer to that quite a bit. He lost his feet.
Which doesn't mean that they're not attached to his body.
Exactly. Michael Murphy from Australia, 18 years old, making his first Olympic appearance and probably the first of many to come. He's doing his inward 1 1/2 somersault pike, 2.1 degree of difficulty.
The information I have says that, you know, he would be a superb senior diver if he could keep his weight under control. He really doesn't look overweight to me, but I understand from the research that that's a problem. I guess he just loves to eat. This inward 1 1/2 somersault is a solid dive. It's a little bit too far back from the springboard, rotated a little bit slow and low also, but it's a nice dive, and 7 1/2 to keep him somewhere in the top 8, 10 divers.
Edwin Jans now from Netherlands. Inward 1 1/2 somersault pike. You know, all of this talk about weight and body types, what do you think is the ideal body type for a male diver?
You're really asking me those tough questions
I know,
today,
put you on
aren't
the spot.
You know, well, I know that Edwin Jans just did a number 1 1/2 somersault pike, and I was concentrating on his distance from the springboard. I thought it was too far out, and that didn't allow him to go in vertically. But the ideal body type is probably a little bit shorter than 6 feet, which Kent Ferguson is 6 feet. You know, I know that's astounding to you, Steve, at 6'1", but you know that was, I'm sure, why you didn't make the Olympic team. But
one of many reasons.
Most of the divers are a little bit shorter these days, and that accounts for maybe their ability to spin so fast and do all those hard tricks. But I really don't know, you know, a percentage of body fat. I think you have to find what works best for you as a diver and what's healthy. And the emphasis being on reflexes is a big thing in diving today, to be able to do those hard dives. But I think you have to be real careful and not get under a certain weight or over a certain weight for your own health.
Dimitri Saltin, the diver who has excellent reflexes, inward 1 1/2 somersault pike.
Saltin just did a very nice inward 1 1/2. These compulsory dives are a demonstration of control and balance, and he looks up on the takeoff. That head position is very important in order to complete the rotations and for his arms to do the work. He wants to use his arms for leverage and not his head, so he bends at the waist after his arms come through, and it works out very well for him.
1 6 1/2 is the low score, 8 is the high score, but he nets all the scores in between at 7 and 7 1/2. Jorge Mondragon now from Mexico, inward 1 1/2 somersault pike.
Mondragon does a wonderful takeoff. He goes way up in the air. The balance is good, and he allows the springboard to help him in that height. Oh, look how high. There's that 5-meter platform right beside him. Look where his hips are. Above the 5 meter.
It's impressive.
Yes, it is impressive. And that allows him to complete the dive above the 3 meter, grab his hand. Now his hands come apart as he goes in the water, as do his feet. That's typical. A lot of times when you grab your hands and they come apart, your feet slip too.
7s and 7 1/2, basically, from the judges. Now, Valery Stitsenko from the unified team doing the same dive, the inward 1 1/2 somersault in pike.
The judges are comparing all these dives, not necessarily because that's their task or they've been told to do that, but they can't help it seeing all the same dives one after another. Now, Stitsenko is going to score higher on that dive because he was able to go in the water not only vertically, but he didn't make a splash. He held his line very well and didn't let go of his hands as he went in the water. Again, his hips are above the 5-meter platform. Not a whole lot of difference in the dive until he grabs the hands and goes in the water. He flat hands it and holds on to them as he goes through. You need to get through the water at least to your shoulders before you let go of your hands.
And higher scores as a result, mostly 8s from the judges for Stitsenko. Now, Albin Kielot, who really has been diving the best of anybody in the field, with the exception of Ton Leander, is doing the same dive.
So again, a comparison from the judges. You know, my preference would probably be to do a different dive instead of one that everybody is doing in one round, but you don't know what your competitors are doing a lot of times, and you have to accommodate yourself. Well, he did that in a different position. Even though it's still listed as the pike position, he chose to do it open pike and not, I'm sorry, closed pike, and he grabs behind his knees. That's where the closed pike, right there, he grabs his legs instead of keeping his arms out to the side. Albin hasn't missed a dive yet, and he's gone in the water vertically with a good stretch and a rip. He's diving beautifully. I say he's the unknown quantity here. Will he get a medal? If he keeps diving like this, it'll be tough for him not to.
There's not a lot of pressure on him here either. He's not really the focus of everyone's attention. 9 1/2 from the Zimbabwe coach, from the Zimbabwe judge, I should say. 8s for the rest of the judges. Excellent score for Keylott. And now Mark Lenzi. He is doing the same dive. The divers do fill out their forms, their diving sheets, and submit them 24 hours in advance. So they can't change the order once they have set the dives.
No, they'll do the dives they submit, and of course that's a standard list of dives that they practice all the time. Now we see Lenzi's hips above the platform too, but he goes a little bit further away from the springboard than Keylott did in the last dive. Let's see if the judges reward him with the same scores or a half a point less. He's a little bit further back, which retards his height just barely.
Would you evaluate it as better than Keylott's or not?
No, I would not.
Well, some of the judges evaluated it as good as Keylott, if not a bit better, so he may have a little momentum going for him in the mind's eye of the judges. Now, Ton Leonda. He's doing the forward 1 1/2 somersault pike. 1.6 is the degree of difficulty. This is his lowest degree of difficulty.
Well, fortunately for Ton, he caught the board a little bit better there than he did in some of his first couple of rounds of dives. And his toes are pointing better into the springboard. He's not making that noise on this one when he leaves the springboard. But his legs separated. He didn't keep his feet together on the very top, the takeoff from the board. His legs were apart. He does a great job of going in vertically and not making much splash. But this is where other divers could catch up a little bit, because this is a lower degree of difficulty dive as opposed to some of those emerald 1 1/2. So we could see the separation be less, even though he may still be winning after this round. It might maybe by less margin.
Well, the scores do indicate a change in the leaderboard. Alvin Keylott now moves ahead of Ton Leonda by about 3 points. Mark Lenzi now is still 3rd. Stutsenko still 4th. Salton 5th. Ferguson is still 6th at 163.56 points. He is approximately 19 or 18 points out of 3rd place behind Mark Lenzi, with his highest degree of difficulty now in his 5th round coming at 2.5. So what do you think, Cynthia?
Well, don't be surprised to see Ferguson move right up here into one of the top 3 spots. This is a reverse 1 1/2 somersault with 1 1/2 twist. It's a 2.5 degree of difficulty. We haven't seen anybody do anything above a 2.1 degree of difficulty thus far. So what that means is that Kent backed off on his degree of difficulty in the first 4 rounds, and he's stacking up here in the 5th round. But this is his best group, his reverse twisting group.
An important dive. What do you think?
That was an important dive. It wasn't square going in the water. He over-twisted a little bit. And the judges on this side of the pool may see it. I don't know if there'll be a deduction on the other side of the pool. Let's watch this takeoff. His arms are a little bit back behind him. He's right up over the diving board. That's important. His distance is perfect. That indicates that he's probably in control and his nerves are doing better. But look, he twists as he goes in the water. Just as his feet went in, he twists a little bit. Let's see if the judges catch it.
7 1/2 and 8, 1-7 from Great Britain and 1-7 from the Swiss judge. So they did catch it, Cynthia.
They
That's
did.
a good point.
Those 2 7s were indication that they saw that over twist.
And 1 does stay in to compute in his score. Lorenzini now from Italy.
Well, I think that's the best dive that Lorenzini has done today. It was very smooth on the end of the springboard. His jump was perfect. Now, I'm surprised that Klaus DiBiase, the great Italian diver, is not coaching him. But Italy has commented that he's not having good results as a coach. And so he has a German coach here coaching him. I'm very surprised, because I know Klaus was the national coach for
former
Italy.
East German coach who was not part of the German unification effort in their sports program. So Heinrich Rothe is now coaching in Italy and producing some good results for the Italian divers who've had a history of success in diving. Now, Joachim Andersen.
The full twisting 1.5 at 2.1 degree of difficulty. He does this twist a little bit late as he comes off the springboard. He stays in the pike position a little bit too long, in my opinion. That's that deep pike. He should get out of that pike sooner and twist a little bit earlier. And you see his feet are going to pass just underneath the springboard. There. Most great divers will do that twist and somersault more on the way up, and their feet will pass above the springboard.
7s and 7 1/2 for Andersen from Sweden. Now Mark Rourke. His final dive in the 5th round is going to be the inward 1 1/2 somersault pike. At the conclusion of this round, we will assess where everyone stands and then begin the optional rounds, where the more difficult part of the contest will begin.
Mark's been so steady, and he's going to continue to be. He loves to dive, and he works out. He says he thinks he works out just as long and hard as the Chinese do, and I take his word for it. He logs a lot of dives in practice. This inward 1.5 is a little bit too far away from the springboard. He's struggling a little bit. You see, he finishes at board level or just underneath instead of above it. So there'll be a slight deduction for that.
7.5 and 8s. He keeps one of those 8s. And he wants more 8s to continue to gain some ground on the rest of the field. Michael Murphy now from Australia.
There, Michael Murphy just did a really nice full twisting 1.5. Now, I talked about Joachim Andersen's full twisting 1.5, where his feet passed underneath the springboard. Michael Murphy does this twist a little bit more on the way up there. The twist is sooner in the somersault, and you'll see that his feet are board level right there as he passes the springboard with his toes. It's a little bit higher when he completed the dive. That is preferable.
Michael is coached in Australia by one of the Chinese coaches who is now living in China, living in Australia rather. Wang Tongxiang is coaching in the Australian, helping their federation with their divers. Edwin Yunyans now from Netherlands.
This is by far Edwin's best required dive. He was very smooth coming off the board. His jump was incredible. He's a great 1-meter diver. He's actually the world champion on 1 meter. And this dive is so high, right up over the board. And he looks at the board right there. It's a gymnastic move. He turns over, looks at the diving board, completes the 1.5 somersault, grabs his hands, and actually pointed his toes pretty well there. Good for Edwin.
Well, Cynthia, the Egyptian judge gave it a 9 and an 8.5 from the rest of the judges. And I think you would have been right there with them.
I would. I love that dive.
Nicely done.
I don't have any complaints with that one.
Dimitri Salton now.
Same dive, but not quite as good as Edwin Yunyans. And he preferred to do it in the pike position. It's the exact same dive, but this just wasn't as dynamic as Edwin's coming off the board. Now we're going to see the same dive. He turns over, looks at the diving board, but he's not quite as high above the board when he comes around, and he's really bearing down hard in his abdominals to try and make this dive. He was actually stuck on that. It's a nice dive, but it's not as good as Edwin's, and they will catch that.
7.5 and 8s, and indeed it was not scored as good as Edwin's. Jorge Mondragon now is the next diver. His 5th and final dive in this round is the forward 1 1/2 somersault with 1 twist. This is 2.1 degree of difficulty.
Mondragon takes 6 steps before he does the hurdle. He starts at the very back of the diving board. I think he might need a runway to do this. Never seen a diver take so many steps, but it's his preference. He has to take at least 3, but he can take as many as he wants. And his full twisting 1.5 is really low finishing. You see there, his feet are well underneath the diving board. And 7, 7.5 would be the highest that dive could go, even if it was perfect, I think.
7 and 7.5 it is. He keeps 1/8. And now Valery Stitsenko from the unified team. Forward 1 1/2 somersault, 1 twist, free, the same dive.
A little bit low on the finish as well. He chose to deep pike from the beginning, do the twist a little bit later. Let's just take off. Let's see where his head position is as he takes off. He looked up. That's nice. His feet are a little bit crossed in the air. Now he's got his arms behind him, and that means he's having trouble making the rotation. He's stuck, but we'll see if the judges take off for that or not. Possibly.
7s, possibly so. 7.5 and 8s from the judges. Now Albin Kielot, who has really been the dark horse in the contest, who has dived so well in the first 4 rounds of dives that he's leading the group, and he's going to do his 5th dive as a forward 1 1/2 somersault with 1 twist, and he has very good twisting skills.
Albin just doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, and that's really what this contest is going to take in order for these divers to be in the top 3. He does everything pretty well. He's particularly good on forward twisters. This isn't one of the best ones I've seen him do, but it's certainly as good as everybody else has been doing, and he finishes well above the diving board. You see his feet were board level when he came around to stretch for this. It may be just a little bit too far out in the middle of the pool. He's about 4 feet from the diving board as he goes by it with his body. And I think if he was, maybe a half a foot closer, he'd probably score 8s or above.
Not quite 8s or above. He does get 1/9 from the Spanish judge and 8, 8.5 from other judges as Mark Lenzi now is prepared to do his last dive, the back 1 1/2 with 1/2 twist.
Lenzi's diving very well today. He hasn't missed a dive yet. He needs to stretch his feet a little bit more on this entry, but these mechanics are beautiful. He takes off, gets his arms right up over his head, does that half twist very early, and then completes the 1 1/2 somersault, looks at the water. Stretch those feet, Mark, and you would be in the 9 range if you'd stretch the feet a little more.
Again, this is the last round of the compulsory rounds. We begin the optionals next. 7.5 and 8s. He's conferring with Coach Dick Kimball, who's the famous Olympic coach in the United States, produced many champions, one of whom was with us the other day, Mickey King Ho. Now Ton Leonda going to do for his final dive in the compulsory rounds, the inward 1 1/2 somersault pike.
I want to see if Ton's feet leave the board when he's priming the board before he jumps up in the air. I don't think they left the board. I don't think that was a crow hop. I know that's been one of the things that plagued him in the past. But I think the dive was a little bit too close to the diving board. Now look at his head as he comes around over the diving board. So, in my opinion, maybe just 3 inches too close.
Not dangerously close, but too close to do a good dive.
That's right. I think it's a little bit out of control as a result of that. And you see he jumps sideways. When a diver's going to be too close to the diving board, a lot of times they jump to one side or the other.
Interesting scores, 2 7.5s, the rest 8s and 9s. And the leaderboard is as follows. Albin Kielot from Germany maintains his lead, 3 points over Ton Leonda from China. Lenzi is in third, 226, just about 7 points back. Ferguson has moved up to 4th. He now is 6 points out of the medal position. Stitsenko and Salton round out the top 6. So, Cynthia, what's your assessment of the compulsory round?
Well, I'm not surprised at all that Albin Kielot is winning. I tell you what, he's the guy I said watch out for. He's not unknown to me, but I don't think people know his name necessarily because he's never been a medal winner in the World Championships or the Olympic Games.
I believe he was a bronze medalist in the World Cup.
Oh, he was, okay.
Lenzi was first, Kielot was second, and Ton Leonda was third. So these 3 people who are presently in the medal hunt right now have done battle before. for world title.
I guess I should specify that. The World Cup, to me, is a little bit different from the World Championship, and I didn't put that in that category, but definitely, and that's what Mark Lenzi has won before. We call him a world champion because he's a World Cup champion.
Well, this is the dive that he did yesterday as his first optional. Back 2 1/2 somersault, pike. He missed the dive. You remember his feet came apart a bit on the entry. Let's see how he does today.
He had the same problem today. I can't believe his balance and his takeoff were absolutely wonderful. I don't know if he knows his feet are coming apart there, but he shouldn't have this problem because I don't think the dive is too fast. I don't think it's whippy. I think he's perfectly in control. He comes out at the right time, but his feet come apart right there, and they never get back together. I know Kent has had shoulder surgery, and that may be the reason why he's not able to reach back evenly with his arms and keep his dive square.
6s, 6.5, and mostly 7s is what he kept on that dive. Lenzi now from Italy doing the inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Trouble with that one on the takeoff. Lenzi backed his hips away. Didn't use the springboard as long as he should have. He needs to stay on it longer in order for it to help him go up in the air. He leaves the board too early, and it pushes his hips back. He has trouble making the rotations. He goes in the water with a pike and short of vertical here. Just didn't make the somersaults, 2 1/2 somersaults.
You can tell he's not pleased with his efforts at 5.5 and 6s from the judges. Joachim Andersen now, reverse 1 1/2 somersault with 2 1/2 twists. This is a 2.9 degree of difficulty. We're going to see those higher degree of difficulties.
Nice entry, a little bit splashy. Does a good job of wrapping that twist up. I think he was a little wobbly in the twist. He should initiate it a little bit sooner. Watch this. Now, no, he just waits a little bit too long, so it wobbles a bit. You see his knees are not absolutely stretched. Now that he goes in the water, he stretches them out. That's a lot of splash for that dive.
Sixes, 7s, and 8s for Andersen. Mark Rourke now from Canada. Inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Very nice inward 2 1/2 somersault. That's the way to start out the optional dive. You want to start out with a dive that's fairly safe and one that you don't have a lot of trouble with. Just get into the optionals, the flow of the more difficult dives. And Mark does this with a dive that he's always been pretty proficient at. He's been doing it for a long time. We saw his feet come apart in the air. I don't think the judges can see that. It was just maybe a 1/2 inch. And from the profile camera, you can't see that, but overhead you can.
6.5 and 7s were the score for Rourke. Michael Murphy now from Australia, the forward 3 1/2 somersault pike.
The amazing thing about Michael Murphy is he's 5'10", so he's not a short diver, and he does a 3 1/2 somersault pike very efficiently and effectively. Watch his arm throw here. He gets him up and throws well before he leaves the board. He creates the leverage while his feet are still on the diving board, and that's what allows the board to kick his legs up behind him. He has a little trouble keeping his feet together. I talk a lot about keeping the feet together, and I think it's real hard on these optional dives because they're doing so many somersaults and twists.
And having to stop the dive and go in vertically, so there's a lot of momentum to contend with as well.
That's right.
Michael Murphy's dive is completed. Now we move to Edwin Junjans from Holland. Forward 3 1/2 somersault pike, 3.1.
judges to compare those two dives. They really were similar in a lot of ways. Edwin has flat feet as he does his somersault, and this is something that right there, you see he's spinning around 3.5 times, and his feet are not stretched, they're not pointed. He comes out and he stretches his feet, but there's probably going to be a half-a-point deduction for that, but he does a great dive otherwise.
6.5 and 7 are the scores for the young diver from the Netherlands. Dimitri Southon now, the reverse 1 1/2 somersault, 2 1/2 twist, a 2.9 degree of difficulty.
What an entry. Didn't even look like he went in the water. I heard him go in the water, but I didn't see any splash.
The only splash maybe from the jets agitating the water there.
The water sprayers underneath, that's the only thing we see. What a great dive in the air. Look how straight his legs are. Form is everything in these twisting dives. His feet came apart just a little bit as he squared out of the dive. There's that momentum working on and torque on the diver's body.
And good scores for such a precise dive, 8, 8.5 for Southon from the unified team. Now Jorge Mondragon from Mexico doing the inward 2 1/2 somersault pike. Cynthia, the pool here at the Olympics is colored with a dark blue tile. What's the purpose of that?
I think it's so the divers can see the pool and the water very well, whether they're on 10 meter or 3 meter. And I'll talk more about that after we watch Jorge's dive. A nice dive. Again, stretch his feet on the bottom and his 8 to come up. But the dark water allows the divers to make the differentiation between the sky and the water. Outdoors, when you're diving outdoors, a lot of times for your visual references, it's confusing to have the water light blue and the sky, of course, the same color. So in 1972 at Munich, they had a dark blue bottom on the pool, and that was the first time I'd ever seen it. Divers really liked it. The water almost looked black because it was an indoor diving pool, but it was easy to differentiate things around you from the water, and spotting is so important, especially in the optional dives.
Stitsenko now.
That was a forward 3.5 somersault pike. He didn't do a good job of making that dive or completing the rotations. His hurdle had everything to do with it. Watch, he steps back in the hurdle, doesn't put his feet there. His feet are 2 or 3 inches from the end of the diving board, and he's leaning in order to do the dive in the right place as far as the distance goes, but he doesn't get the rotation because he sacrifices distance, height for distance, so he doesn't go up very high.
Low score from the Great Britain judge at 4.5. Of course, that is eliminated, so he nets 6s, basically. Now the leader, Alban Kielot, doing his first optional dive, a triple twisting 1 1/2 somersault. And he has done this well. He has very good twisting skills.
I think he has the best triple twister in the contest. It's a beautiful dive. Once again, Alban is so smooth and so fluid in his movements. I think I've said this on every dive he's done. I know it sounds monotonous, but it's what makes Alban a contender today. He does a lot of things effortlessly, just like Greg Louganis used to, and he knows right where vertical is, so he's able to line up, go in the water. He's perfected his rip. So, you know, I really think it's pleasing to watch Alban dive because of his smoothness and his ability to do the difficult dives and make them look easy.
And a special grin from our producer, Doug Wren, who entered the $1 betting pool that we have here as to who's going to win this contest. And I believe his pick might have been Alban Kielot.
But we won't tell anybody.
Right. Mark Lenzi now. Inward 2 1/2 somersault pike, 3.0.
One of Mark's better inward 2.5 pikes. I've seen him do this dive so high and so well. You know, he's an acrobat. He's a gymnast. He doesn't have trouble making it. And he's still going to receive very high scores on this, but I've seen him finish it above the diving board. I'm not judging, thank goodness, for Mark, because I probably wouldn't give him the 9s because I know he can do it higher and better and usually does. But it's still a great dive. There's not a lot wrong with the dive. It's just a little bit out in the middle of the pool. Still going to be one of the best ones done because he makes it so easily.
And 9s there were, 2 of them, and the rest 8.5, so he's off to a terrific start as he enters the portion of the contest where he really excels, the optional rounds. Ton Leonda now. He's doing the back 2 1/2 somersault pike.
To me are the ones that he picks up points on because the divers worry about their back and reverse 2.5, and I think Ton Leonda starts out with this dive because he does it so well. He has a little knee bend coming off the diving board, but I don't know that the judges would pick that up because we're seeing it in super slow motion. The best thing is that he comes out and tightens down, goes in the water, and he doesn't make a splash. You know, these are dives that the divers worry about getting past. But he puts it here for a reason. He does it well, and he never misses the dive.
And you hear the crowd murmuring a little bit because of 2 7.5s. They expected more 9s. Keylott still in first then. Ton Leonda in second. Lenzi in third. South in fourth. Ferguson is in fifth. And Yun is in sixth. For those of you who want to order the Olympic Triple Cast on pay-per-view, here's what's coming up tomorrow. On the Red Channel, Janet Evans has one more chance for gold when she swims in the 800-meter freestyle. And the title of the world's fastest man underwater will be settled when Matt Biondi and Tom Jaeger enter the 50-meter free for perhaps the last time in history. Swimming finals are live at 12 noon. Jim Courier, tennis's hottest player, smashes his way to the goal atop his favorite surface, clay. Over 6 hours of live tennis starts at 5 o'clock Eastern on the White Channel. And on the Blue Channel, the first day of women's basketball tips off with Teresa Edwards and the rest of the other Dream Team players. The Olympics Triple Cast. It's a whole new way to watch the Olympics. And now let's take a look at Kent Ferguson as he continues his stake to try to be a medalist at the Olympics with a reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike. He lost a little ground on that last round. Bad sign, huh?
It is a bad sign. He keeps losing his feet. They come apart on some of these pike dives over and over and over again. I don't know what he's going to do about that, but at this point, he's 20 points back behind the top 3 divers in this contest, and he's not helping himself here, even though the dive is really nice in the air. That pike position is flawless. Watch here once again. I think it's really hard for him to reach back. His shoulder on one side has been operated on. And when he tries to reach back for the water to go in it vertically, his feet come apart. I know that sounds crazy, one end and the other, but I think that happens sometimes.
They're related. As he stretches for the water, he might be receiving some pain. You don't know, but you can only speculate. Lorenzini now from Italy, a forward 3 1/2 somersault pike.
That was pretty slow right from the diving board. It kind of looked like he was going to do a 2 1/2 somersault, and yet he listed a 3 1/2 here. He needs to throw his arms a lot sooner to create the force. Right here. Reach, throw. No, he's see, he bends his elbows and reaches back behind him. That's a real inefficient use of leverage. So he's underneath the diving board, just finishing 3 somersaults. He struggles to come near 3 1/2. It's closer to a 3 1/4.
6s and 5 1/2 for Lorenzini. Joachim Andersson now from Sweden, doing the inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Amazing that he made that dive. His hips went back and he had trouble with the distance. Again, the ideal distance, I believe, is about 1 to 3 feet from the diving board, and you see his hips right there as he took off. they slid back instead of up over his head. And he ends up about 5 feet from the board, but he still makes a dive. You know, he's very powerful.
6.5 and 7s as Joachim Andersen jumps in the hot tub to unwind and prepare for the next round. Mark Rourke, forward 3 1/2 somersault pike.
He's still doing a lot of dives for 7s. I think Mark Rourke could do a lot of these dives in his sleep. He just doesn't have a problem doing dives for 7s.
You can do it
we
both
see him go in
forward
both
and backwards.
directions. I think that's quite an accomplishment. But his forward 3 1/2 somersault pike is pretty easy to make for him. He's got short legs, but he has the ability to throw his arms hard, and he's got a high center of gravity.
Michael Murphy now from Australia, back 2 1/2 somersault pike. You'd mentioned that they have to show a dive from each of the groups, and the groups are forward, back, reverse, inward, and twister. And the men have an option of doubling up on one of those groups in the optional round, so you may see twisting optionals being repeated.
Michael Murphy did a wonderful entry on this dive. Ended up vertically. He arched before he went in the water. You have a hard time getting above a 7, 7.5 on this because of that arch, I think. And you see, that arch starts off in the beginning. You arch on the beginning, have a tendency to arch right there, ouch, on the end. He uses his visual references as well, but that arch, I don't think that 8 is probably appropriate because of the arch.
6.5 and 7s basically are the scores that he would net. Edwin Junjans now from the Netherlands doing the reverse 3 1/2 somersault. He and Mark Lenzi are the only 2 divers in the finals doing this most difficult dive at 3.5.
Well, there hasn't been another difficult dive done of this caliber, and there won't be. Pay off for Edwin because it's 3.5 degree of difficulty, and that's the hardest dive, as Steve mentioned, that can be performed on the 3-meter springboard. Mark Lenzi will do it for his last dive. Edwin's form is not very good in the dive. We see he looks more like a gymnast in the air. They call that cowboying a tuck. We call it splitting, and he's a little bit twisted in the air as well. He turned to the left as he left the springboard. And that's why he got those low scores. The judges are right.
Good judging, then, we'd say, in the Olympics thus far. These neutral, all neutral judges. No one has a competitor in the finals. Doing a good job here. Now, Dimitri Salton from the unified team is doing the inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
He's been very steady. He received nothing less than a 7 on any of his dives, and he'll receive 7.5, 8, I think, on this dive. He takes off and looks up. I thought that was the best thing he did as he took off. He kept his head in line, allows him to make the somersaults. He's good at cleaning up the dive and going in the water without an entry. He's a platform diver, so that's necessary on the platform in order to be in contention. He does it well on springboard.
Jorge Mondragon now. His 7th dive is a back 2 1/2 somersault pike.
I believe this is a forward.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's a forward.
It's a good forward 3 1/2
Sure
somersault pike, too. He took those 6 steps before he took a hurdle. I'm not sure the purpose of taking all those steps, but if he's comfortable doing that, of course, it's his choice. No reason not to if that's what he's used to. But this is a nice dive. He starts the somersaulting on the way up, which allows him to complete it before he gets to the water and stretch out of it. That's very nice for Jorge Mondragon. The most difficult part about that dive is trying to make the rotations.
7.5 and 8. Good scores for Mondragon. Now Stitsenko, who is doing the back 2 1/2 somersault pike, 3.0 degree difficulty.
And again, this is one of the groups that the divers are concerned about getting past. Their blind entry dives, a back 2.5 somersault. You really don't see the water in the direction that you're spinning until you get there. Oh. Radar once again.
That was exceptional entry.
It was beautiful. He really didn't look like he went in the water once again. I think he did this on the last dive too. Took off and just a little flex in the knees and the back as he takes off. But look, he looks at the water in the springboard there, then he looks back, makes a hole, and goes through it with the rest of his body, and that's why he didn't splash.
Eights, 1.7.5. Could it have been higher, do you think?
I think, you mean could he have scored higher? Yeah, I think if he had kept his legs and his back from arching on the beginning, he would have received 9.5 on that dive. Would have had to have been higher to get 10s,
right.
I think.
Okay. Albin Kilat, inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
It's a lot of dive for Alvin at 5'11". Doesn't weigh that much. He's only 154 pounds, but he
certainly has long legs.
He does have long legs, and he has to pass the springboard without touching it with his feet. Spinning inwards, that's a lot of dive. I say he doesn't miss dives. He just made a liar out of me.
Well, you don't see that very often. I'm wondering if he's taking a look at the scoreboard now and seeing he's in first. Maybe he's reacting to that.
I think he thought he was too close to the board, and he put his head down and didn't come out of the dive. Look how poor his feet are when he passes the springboard.
Right.
I think he thought he might touch the springboard with his feet. He didn't want to look around. If he stayed in the pike, he might get by it instead of coming out and stretching for the water at the appropriate time. Look at his feet right here. He passed the springboard with just an inch. He ducks his head and goes past vertical.
And you listen to the crowd reaction to those scores, 4, 4.5, and crowd certainly is on his side. Can't understand why that didn't get 8.5. The door now is starting to open for Mark Lenzi as well as other divers in the contest who are behind behind Kilat.
The door is definitely open. And the fact that the judges agree means that, you know, that they know what they're doing.
Well, hopefully the judges will agree and the crowd will agree. We'll have total agreement on this dive.
Well, Mark's rallying. Mark's watching the scoreboard at every juncture, so he knows that that just put him in position to move right up into one of the top 2 spots. And he does a back 2.5 somersault pike without any break in his knees. Let me mention that. That's so important. He takes off, and he doesn't bend his knees going up into the pike. So many divers are doing that. He keeps his legs together, doesn't have any problems. This is one of the best back 2.5 pikes that's done and will be done today. I love that dive.
7.5 and 8s for a high degree of difficulty dive for Mark Lenzi. This crowd is wonderful. They don't seem partial to any one diver. They just want to see good scores and good diving. And Ton Leonda may have an opportunity to show them such as a reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike.
John just had a little trouble with that dive. He was over the end of the board, meaning that it was leaning a little bit too far forward with his body. He swung his arms beautifully and made the somersaults easily. But let's look at his angle of takeoff here. As he comes down on the springboard, he's over. You see his chest was over the end. Now, his feet separated on the top of the dive. But the problem shows up on the bottom. Look how he swings past vertical. He's trying to save it. You see, he bends his knees as he goes through the water. Oh, his feet were right over the end. He was hanging 10. His toes were over the end. We use that surfing term in diving when his feet are over the end of the diving board, but there it goes past vertical. Whoa.
And the scores, 6.5 and 7s. And he drops into the second position at this point of the contest. Welcome back to Montjuic Swimming Pool, where Mark Lenzi now has moved into first. Ton Leonda is second. Salton is third. And Albin Kilat dropped all the way to 4th position. Ferguson from the United States is in 8th. We have completed 7 rounds of diving here for the 3-meter springboard. There are 4 rounds of diving left. And the diving has been somewhat erratic with everyone, with the exception of Lenzi, really missing a dive.
I think Lenzi loves it when somebody misses a dive, and he can take advantage of that. He's a competitor. He said he didn't come here to take second, and he loves to compete. He said, boy, do I like this. I'm in the Olympic final. You know, it can't be anything but good. So he saw Alvin Keelot miss a dive and just did one of the best back 2.5 somersaults pike of his life.
Now, the wind has kicked up a little bit. Do you think that may be affecting the quality of the diving we're seeing at all?
You know, I think it's possible, but I kind of doubt it, Steve. I think they'd be waiting longer before they go if the wind was a problem.
Okay. Ken Ferguson, currently in 8th, forward 3 1/2 somersault.
Now, this is a place where Kent could start to make a move, and it's getting late in the contest, so he needs to do it now. This forward 3 1/2 somersault pike is one of his better dives today. Didn't have trouble with his feet coming apart like he has on his first 2 optional dives. We're going to see him go in the water and grab his hands. There, he gets the hands, grabs them, keeps his feet together. Very good. Now, he could pull up. He's 18 points behind 3rd place at this point, but he could gain, I would say, up to 10 points a dive and be in the medals if he does spectacularly from here on out. He needs a lot of 7s and above.
And a smile as he looks up at O'Brien, whose feet you see in your screen there. O'Brien is his coach and has been trying to understand exactly where he's been in this contest and what happened yesterday in terms of his scores and his frame of mind. 7 and 7.5 were the scores for his forward 3 1/2 somersault pike. Now, Lorenzini from Italy is doing the back 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Going into the water, I didn't think the dive was going to end up vertical because he got into the somersault a little bit late. See, he reaches up and goes wide with his arms. He separates them and comes down the sides instead of reaching above his head and pulling his legs up to his hands. So he's in a little bit of trouble there, but he certainly knows where the water is. He sees it before he goes in backwards. He's able to line up real well.
7.5, basically 370.23 total points for Lorenzini from Italy. Joachim Andersen now from Sweden, forward 3 1/2 somersault pike.
Joachim just continues to amaze me. He makes these difficult dives and really doesn't have a problem with the 3 1/2 somersaults here. Talked about he's not quite as lean looking as some of the divers, but he moves quite quickly. He's got a lot of power in his upper body, particularly in his arms, and he uses them very effectively to make these dives. You see that splash coming up. That's not preferable. It's a little bit too splashy to get really high scores. No 8s because of that.
Mostly 7s from the judges. Mark Rourke now from Canada, doing the reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike.
That's the first takeoff that Mark Rourke has missed. He put his feet right on the end of the board. He was in good balance. But then as he took off, he lifted his head rather than swinging his arms right up. Let's see if we can see his head come up as he leaves the springboard. Right there. His head goes back. He loses control as a result of changing that head position before his arms come through. And he's going to swing right over on this dive. Gets a lot of momentum from throwing his head back rather than reaching his arms and having control.
Scores 4 and 4 1/2, so deficient dive for Mark Rourke from Canada. And now Michael Murphy, a reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike, the same dive.
Well, he's able to control a little bit better than Mark Rourke, and I think he kept his head in line better as he took off. I have a problem with his knees in the somersault. This is a pike position, and his knees are bent in that pike just a little bit. His toe point looks good from here, but he goes in, starts to wash over. There's a pretty good save underneath the water. He arches through the water and pulls his knees in order to save and compensate for that dive going over a little.
Pulled the dive in almost vertically and received 7, 7.5 from the judges. Edwin Yunyans now, back 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Edwin's back 2 1/2 somersault pike was mechanically a bit deficient. He bends his knees in the pike and doesn't stretch real well. If he would lengthen out his lines, now we're going to see, there's the bent knees. It's almost tucked position.
Sure is.
It's really difficult for me to understand that. If a diver lives a dive in pike, they really need to concentrate on keeping the legs straight and stretching more.
Scores 6.5 and 7, so judges may not have taken off as much as they could have for that bent knee position. Dmitry Sautin now, forward 3 1/2 somersault pike.
Good job on his forward 3 1/2. Boy, that'll pay off for Sautin. That's a 3.1 degree of difficulty. Anytime you see a degree of difficulty of 3.0 or higher, you're going to know that that's one of the better ones in the contest. So if they do these dives well, they're going to gain a lot of scores. And as a result, 70 points, anytime 70 points come up or plus, that's a great dive. That's a definite hit, and that'll probably move them up in the contest. And Sautin does a beautiful 3 1/2 pike. He reaches up above his head and throws his arms down in front of his body early, creates the force necessary to make the somersault. His form is great. He doesn't bend his knees. His feet don't separate going in the water.
Scores 6.5 on the low side to 8 on the high side. He nets 6.5 and 7s. Now Mondragon, reverse 1 1/2 somersaults, 2 1/2 twists, 2.9.
Well, the fans like the dive, but it's not going to score real high,
Right.
Steve. I think more 6.5 range, because it's moving away from the diving board instead of right up over it. On these reverse twisters, the dive has to look like the diver is going to come right down on the end of the diving board as he leaves in the first half of the somersault. And you see that this dive is way out there. You can't even see the diving board as he passes it, which means it's probably 6 feet or more out in the middle of the pool.
And the scores reflect that difference in that distance problem, 6.5 and 7s. Valery Stutsenko now from the unified team. He's doing the reverse 2 1/2 somersault tuck. This is the dive that he changed from a 3 1/2 tuck.
We've seen most of the divers doing this dive in the pike position, which carries a higher degree of difficulty. But Sautin has had some trouble in practicing consistently, and maybe that's the reason why he changed this dive. I think he could do it pike. He certainly has enough amplitude on the takeoff, and you see he washes past vertical on this. And he has really good form, so I'd like to see him do it pike rather than tuck, and he could go after it a little more, not worry about going over like that.
And lower scores for that dive is Albin Kielot now. He's getting ready for forward 3 1/2 somersault pike. And he missed the previous dive before, so hopefully he will be able to recover and forget that miss, Cynthia.
Well, he needs a good dive here, because 4 1/2 on one of the optional dives doesn't seem likely to put him in the medal. And I said watch out for Albin the way he was diving in the compulsories. 8s and 9s, a lot of them. First optional, 8s and 9s. Well, he's
Almost a failed dive.
almost a failed dive, and the reason was his knees buckled. They absolutely gave as he landed on the end of the diving board. You know, he has gone from being the leader to being totally out of the contest in one dive. That's the Olympic Games,
Yeah,
folks.
it is, isn't it?
Watch his knees give out as he lands on the end of the board, right? Oh, there. He couldn't extend through, and so he's having trouble even completing 3 somersaults here, much less 3.5. And if his feet had skimmed the water before his hands touched, it would have been a failed dive.
And the beneficiary of that, of course, is Kent Ferguson, who is presently in the 5th position with more divers yet to go, but we're projecting that he probably will be in 5th after this round is completed. And Mark Lenzi now is doing the forward 3 1/2 somersault pike. Is that disconcerting to a diver? He's doing the exact same dive. The diver before him is
I think Mark's doing a reverse.
doing his reverse 3 2 1/2.
Reverse 2.5 somersault pike. No, I don't think anything bothers Mark at this point. If a diver misses a dive, he's going to take advantage of it. He doesn't have a problem with that. He loves to watch the scoreboard. He wants to know where he is throughout the meet, unlike Kent Ferguson. And this reverse 2.5 somersault pike is very steady. He's got absolutely perfect height on. He's above the 5-meter spinning in the reverse direction. He almost doesn't know what to do with all this height. He's going over, but he hits the water and pulls his knees back in. That's the save that I've talked about, compensating underneath the water. But Mark is very good. He looked down as he left the springboard. He's spotting the water as he takes off. He spots it again as he comes around before looking back, and he sees it one last time before he goes in back behind him.
Explaining to Kimball exactly what that felt like to him as he looks at the scores. 5.5 is the lowest score, which is dropped, so he keeps mostly 6.5 and 7. Now Tan Leanda from China is going to do his next dive.
And this is an inward 2.5 somersault pike. Again, I want to see if he double bounces the springboard.
8 and 8.5 will enable him to gain the lead from Lenzi.
The dive in the air and the entry is worth an 8, but he did lift his feet off the springboard before he jumped up in the air. Right here, there's a lift just barely off the springboard. We'll see if the judges deduct for that. Now, I think because it was minimal, it probably won't take off more than 0.5 point. But that is called a crow hop, and the judges have been instructed. It's an involuntary bounce before he leaves the springboard.
So you wouldn't expect, say, if the judge was going to score that 8, he would score it net 7 or 7.5, something in that
I
range.
think the dive is worth 8s, but I wouldn't give it above an 8.
Okay, and there you see the results. Good judging. 7s and 7.5. 1/8 is dropped from that score. And Mark Lenzi now moves into 1st with the help, of course, Alvin Keelot's miss. Lenzi's 1st. Tan Leanda is 2nd. Dimitri Salton from the unified team is 3rd. Mondragon from Mexico moves up to 4th. And Ferguson is indeed in 5th place. A mere 14 points out of the bronze medal position. So there is light opening in these doors in this contest for all of the American divers, and Lenzi is in an excellent position.
Lenzi's in an excellent position, but so is Kent at this point. Kent has his best dives remaining, and he likes to come from behind. He likes to be considered in the back of the pack. And he has an inward 2.5 somersault in this round. It was his best dive yesterday.
Sure was. It actually got him here.
It got him in the finals yesterday. So he could pick up another 8 to 10 points right here.
And there you see Fu Ming Shaw and some of the other Chinese divers looking on as Kent Ferguson now has an opportunity to get Olympic medals. It's been an uphill struggle for him, but he's doing his inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
He's got his best dives coming. This one and 2 more. He did it again.
Sure did.
That was a beautiful inward 2.5 somersault pike. He didn't hesitate. You know, I think he's going to have to learn how to accept the position of front runner eventually, because he didn't have to put himself in this position at this deficit. And he could have been a contender for the gold medal if he wouldn't have done that. But this is a beautiful inward 2.5 somersault pike. It's very aggressive. Now he's not hesitating at all.
7.5 and 8, 8.5, 7.5. He nets 2 8s and 1 7.5 out of those scores, or 2 7.5s, I should say. Lorenzini now, the next diver from Italy.
Lorenzini's doing a forward 2.5, a reverse 2.5 somersault pike, reverse. It's a 3.0 degree of difficulty. No, can't make that. He reached his arms above his head, but he didn't swing them up there. He just placed them above his head on the takeoff, and I knew he wasn't going to rotate. Now you see, he bends his arms to reach above his head, and it just doesn't work. He needs to swing them up there and keep them above his head rather than reaching down for his legs. And you see, lands on his back because he doesn't make the rotations. It's all in the takeoff.
And there are the lower scores for Lorenzini. Now, Joachim Andersson from Sweden, his 9th dive is going to be a back 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Joachim's been pretty steady. He does a back 2 1/2 somersault pike just a little bit short of vertical, but it's a safe dive. It's not a blow. Grabs the pike on the way up, spinning board level when he comes out. That's impressive. He just doesn't quite finish the dive all the way, and you see that splash going just a bit short of vertical. Still within the 6, 6.5, 7 range.
You know, diving outdoors, you're susceptible to the elements, and it has become a little cloudy for the first time in about a week. The lighting has changed a bit, and there is a bit of a breeze. Any impact whatsoever on the diving?
I still think it's perfect weather for diving. I think the temperature and the humidity, as warm as they are, it's hot sitting out here, and I don't think the divers are cold. Even though the breeze is picking up, there is a wall behind the divers, and so I just don't see them hesitating before they go. I think they would wait, and Mark Rourke here doing a full twisting 2 1/2 doesn't wait. He doesn't seem to have a problem with the wind, or I think he would take his time and not go quite so quickly. It could become a factor, but at this point, no, I don't think it is.
All right, 7.5 and 7s from the judges. Everyone in agreement on that dive. Michael Murphy's next. Doing the inward 2 1/2 somersault pike, Cynthia.
The cloud cover, Steve, is nice for us sitting out here, but I don't think it's made the pool any more glary. Okay. When the sun's out bright, sometimes there's more of a glare, and I think you can still differentiate between the pool, the sky, and the side. Very good inward 2 1/2 somersault pike from Michael Murphy. Very nice. I think he's got a long career ahead of him. He's only 18 years old, and he just really does these dives without a lot of trouble. He's probably capable of doing an inward 3 1/2 one of these days. He uses his arms very effectively. I think you told me he has a Chinese coach.
That's right.
And I think he's taught him a lot about mechanics.
Chinese, very well known for their inward somersault skills.
That's right.
Edwin Yunyans now, reverse 1 1/2 somersault with 3 1/2 twists.
This is Edwin's second highest degree of difficulty dive. The ticket for him is to try and stretch his feet and legs in the twist and throughout the dive, because his form is less than pretty in the air a lot of times. Actually, the twisting position was pretty good, but he came around and his feet separated before he squared out of the dive with his arms to reach for the entry. You see, his feet are together. They're crossed a little bit, but his legs are straight here. Now let's watch when he comes out of the twist what happens. Right there, his feet separate there. And he goes in the water with a twist. The judges should deduct for that twist.
And the judges, being very brave here to stand up to the feelings of the crowd, do in fact deduct for that over twist. Although the crowd may not really appreciate the low scores, they were fair. Dmitry Saltin now, back 2 1/2 somersaults.
little bit of trouble with his takeoff because he leans back too far. He has that arch taking off from the springboard just on this takeoff, the angle here. There's that arch. And he's jumping back too far. Gets a little swing on this dive, but he's good at stretching out, lengthening his radius, and stopping the dive. It's rotating over, but he's good at saving this, which means that he lengthens his body to slow the somersault down when he comes out and stays flat, reaches for the water. He can feel that he's going over, so he pulls his knees as he goes underwater to try and compensate.
Salton, who was in third, his score's not quite up to the expectations that he would want, and may even give a little more room to Kent Ferguson. Now Jorge Mondragon back 1 1/2 somersault, 2 1/2 twist.
He went in the water there too. Again, you see a difference of opinion from the judges a lot of times, because on one side of the pool the twist is apparent, on the other side it may not be. And as he squares out of the dive and reaches for the water, his hips are a little bit sideways, and he has trouble keeping his legs square to the end of the pool as a result of that. And that's why he's receiving that 6.5.
That's right. Zimbabwe judge gave him an 8, however, so he nets 6.5 and 7s basically for the dive. Now Valery Stutsenko is the next diver. He's from the unified team. He's doing the inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Takeoff. In the air, he was really tight. His pike looks good. His form, legs were together, his feet stretched. Should reach for the water a little bit sooner out in front of him to stop this dive vertically. The only thing wrong with it, because everything in the air is beautiful, and he reaches underneath him a little bit for the entry and rotates just a hair past vertical. Still, it's a 7, 7.5. Might even receive an 8 on that dive.
There are the scores, 7.5 basically from the judges. And the crowd is applauding, as you hear, in appreciation and encouragement for this diver, Albin Kielot. He's doing his back 2 1/2 somersault.
In this round, does a beautiful back 2 1/2 somersault pike. You know, I think Alvin realized that he was in contention the last couple of rounds, and all of a sudden his nerves and everything just completely got out of control. I don't think he ever expected to be winning in the Olympic Games, and that's a problem for a lot of people that don't see themselves in that position. Now, this is a good dive, certainly scores well on that, but he got such low scores on 2 dives that he's not going to be able to come back and be in medal contention.
Very true. He's ranked 11th after that round. Now, Mark Lenzi. Mark Lenzi's dive. Forward 3 1/2 somersaults. He could be on his way.
He's looking better every round. He's smiling, and he knows that he's got his best dive coming. He's doing a 3 1/2 somersault pike here. Mark has done a 4 1/2, so this is a piece of cake for him. This is not a hard dive for Mark, whereas for most men, this is the most difficult dive they do. Forward spinning 3 1/2 times with straight legs. But Mark makes it easily, comes out right about 3 meters, puts it away. He's going to score it real high. You know, I just don't see a problem with this. Mark is such a good technician here. And he has the tightest pike in the contest. looks at the water, grabs his hands. You see the grab as he goes in the water? Beautiful dive.
Well, as you might guess from the crowd reaction, all nines for that dive, and Mark Lenzi is in first place. And this gentleman, Tom Leonda, as you said in the opening, has never won when he's won in the qualifying rounds. Diving last has not been an advantage for him.
No, it hasn't, and I think that the fact that he hasn't made a habit of winning from that last position,
right,
diving last.
Which should be an advantage.
It should be an advantage, but it's not for him, and I think when you've been in that position so many times and all you can think about is how you haven't won the contest, you haven't made a habit out of capitalizing on it, then I think it turns into the same old story, and that's what's happening here. Tom Leonda should not miss this 3.5 somersault pike. It goes short of vertical. It looks like to me he's tightening up now.
Right.
You know, none of these divers have won an Olympic Games before because of the dominance of Greg Louganis, so nobody has been able to make it a habit, but he's the man that was waiting to do it.
Well, there are the scores, 8, 8.5 for that dive, which seem a little bit high for a dive that didn't go in quite straight.
I don't think it was but a 6.5, 7 dive.
Lenzi, though, has the lead at 5:23, and Tom Leonda is almost 11 points, or 8 points, I should say, behind him at 5:06. Salton is third at 4:75. Ferguson, look at this. Ferguson is in fourth place, and he's only 5 points out of a medal.
What a
5
great
points.
contest, Steve. What a great
wonderful
contest.
Well, the absence of Greg Louganis certainly has not made an impact on the excitement of the sport. And what about Ferguson? Now, he needed some breaks to get to where he is, and he certainly has had the, can he take advantage of these opportunities?
Well, let's see if he can just do these last 2 dives without thinking about medals and without thinking about the possibilities here, because his best 2 dives are remaining. They are both reverse twisters, a reverse 1.5 with 2.5 twist right now, 2.9 degree of difficulty, and then he's going to add another twist in the last round. If he doesn't tighten up and he does the dive the way he does it in practice, I suspect and I predict that he will be a bronze medalist in the Olympic Games.
So let's find out. Reverse 1 1/2 somersault, 2 1/2 twist.
It's amazing to me. It's amazing that he put himself in that position, and now he looks like it's smooth sailing from here on out. He does this dive without any problem whatsoever. He's a little bit further out from the springboard than I've seen him. May have eliminated a little bit of height, but it's so smooth and it's so pretty, and the entry is absolutely clean and vertical.
Well, Ferguson may be giving us all a lesson in persistence. 8, 8.5 from the judges, and he moves a little bit closer to at least a bronze medal. Lorenzini now. Back 1 1/2 somersault, 2 1/2 twist, 2.8.
Back 1.5 or 2.5 twist, but it's not dynamic. You really should jump up in the air and wrap that twist up right away. Now, see, he waits a little bit too long. Again, his knees are not straight. That stretch is really limiting his ability to receive 7.5s and better. I don't think he could ever really get the high scores because of the flex in the knees.
7s mostly, and they have turned on some of the stadium lights here as the cloud cover is thickening a bit. And I don't know about Kent, and I'd have to speculate, but ever since it's become cloudy, his diving has seemed to have become clearer.
Are you looking into your magic ball? Your crystal ball?
My crystal ball. Joachim Anderson there.
That was a reverse 2.5 somersault pike. He really doesn't line up the dive vertically as well as he should. I don't think he's looking back on the entry as much as he should. He takes off with a little bit of arch in his back, but the dive works out okay for him in terms of spinning, but he needs to look at the water sooner and grab his hands. You saw his hands were way apart as he went in. That grab is so important to cleaning up the entry. If you don't grab, you're going to have trouble getting those 7.5s and 8s.
And certainly they weren't there that time. Mark Rourke now, back 2 1/2 somersault pike for the Canadian diver.
Good dive from Mark Rourke. Feet came apart in the air a bit. See where he has trouble with those feet here. He's a little stuck on the dive. He really should swing his arms faster on the beginning to create that somersault. You see, oh, there's an arch in his back. And that's why he had trouble keeping his feet together. He was pulling to make the dive on the bottom.
6.5 and 7s and 60.30 points for that one dive. Now Michael Murphy from Australia. He's doing the reverse 1 1/2 somersault, 2 1/2 twist, the same dive we saw Ferguson do. Oh,
Really a wonderful dive.
that was every bit as good as Ferguson's dive.
Well, I don't know if it went up as high in the air. That would be my only question there, was that it was executed very well. I don't know if he jumped up quite as high in the air as Ferguson did, but his feet are crossed in the twist just a little, but it certainly is mechanically sound. He executes the somersault and the twist without any problem, and he's absolutely vertical on the bottom.
And the judges certainly do agree with that comparison. It was 8s, it's an excellent score, but not quite in the 9 range that Ferguson's dive was. Now, Edwin Yunyon's inward 2 1/2 somersault pike.
I just can't get past Edwin's feet as he takes off the diving board. When he flexes them, they really look bigger. They're flat as he leaves the diving board. The rule book states there, look at those flat feet. And his knees are bent. Again, the form is so important. He does a good job of pointing him going in the water, so we know he can point his toes. Tighten down, Edwin, in the air, and you...
Those style flaws really hurt him.
Yes, they do.
Right.
Because Edwin is a good diver.
This is the only man now standing between Ferguson and a bronze, Dimitri Salton. He's doing a dive he received 5.5s on yesterday.
Well, he's going to receive more than 5.5 today. That was the best one I've seen him do since he's been here. He just nailed the entry. It was a beautiful reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike. I noticed he didn't hesitate. He didn't even think about the dive. I think that's probably pretty good. When you're in a pressure situation, let your reflexes take over. Go ahead and do what you know how to do. Don't think about it too much. Look at this entry. Goes in the water and he disappears. I'd like to see his knees stretched in the somersaults a little more. I don't think I would reward that with 9s because of the knees and the somersault, but everything else was impeccable. Now that's 1/10 degree of difficulty more than Kent's dive.
That's right, and 8.5s and 8 certainly is the score that will keep him a bit ahead of Ferguson at this point. Mondragon now back 2 1/2 somersault pike.
The Mexican crowd loves it. He's got his fans on the other side of the pool. The Mexican team is pulling about it. But he takes off and swings his arms well in the beginning to create those somersaulting techniques going backwards, and then he looks at the water, grabs his hands, and he swings his elbows out, and that's what's so good. You see that splash just doesn't come up because he makes that hole and goes through it with the rest of his body. Makes a hole with his hands, pulls his body through it by swimming his entry.
And a handshake from his coach, who's very proud of the way his protege is diving here. Now Stetsenko is doing his forward 1 1/2 somersault, 3 twists.
Not quite square with the twist. We talk about how important it is to not be over-twisted or under-twisted. And he goes in the water and his legs aren't quite pointing in the right direction. 3 twists, no problem. Nice twisting position in the air, very smooth, straight. And as he reaches for the water with both hands for the grab, you see that his legs turn just there. Whenever you see both legs from the side, you know there's a turn.
And so too the judges know. 5s, 6 1/2s, and 6s. Low scores for Stetsenko. And now Kilat, reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Had his downfall in the middle of the optional dives, and he's really gotten it back together now. He does a beautiful, smooth, high, reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike. I think he should have shut his brain off a couple of dives ago, so I think he just realized that he was in contention for an Olympic medal, and he couldn't handle it. And now he's out of it. He's diving relaxed, and no nerves here. Nice dive.
There are the scores, good scores for the diver from Germany. And the crowd is cheering now for Mark Lenzi, who's doing his reverse 1 1/2 somersault with 3 1/2 twists. And if there is a group that he is weak at, it is the twisting group.
But his mechanics has improved since he's been with Dick Kimball. The twisting mechanics look so good. I know Dick Kimball works on that in the belt, on the trampoline with Mark Lenzi all the time. I saw him working on it here, even at the Olympic Games. And the only problem with this dive, and it's a minor flaw, is that he doesn't rip the entry. You see, he's straight in the twist. His feet are crossed, but they're together. And he goes for the entry, and he doesn't make the hole. His hands are going to come apart just before his feet go under. And so a little bit too much splash. That may prevent him from receiving 9. But a great dive otherwise, because he jumps up so high in the air, he completes the dive very high at board level.
And the scores are high indeed. 8 1/2, 6:05.13 is the points now for Ton Leonda to try to meet or surpass as he tries to enter the pool now for his 10th round. He's doing a forward 2 1/2 somersaults with 2 twists, a 3.2 degree of difficulty.
Ton Leonda is still having trouble with his board work. He's not smooth. I heard the board again as he landed on it. He's flattening his feet early instead of stretching his toes into the diving board right there. Flattens them and steps back a little bit. And he's going to complete the double twist, but his feet are apart in the air. There should be a deduction for that. They came way apart. And he goes in short of vertical. He's tightened up, in my opinion. He's not making his dives. There, the feet flatten very early. That prevents the diver from being in good balance on the end of the diving board. He misses this dive.
And the scores, the biggest discrepancy in points so far at the Olympic diving venue, 5 1/2 to 8. Of course, both of those scores are eliminated. He keeps 6 1/2, and here's how it looks. Mark Lenzi, 6:05.13 is the leader. Ton Leonda, 5:71.11 is second, and Dimitri Soughton third, 5:50.56, and Ferguson from the United States is fourth, 5:39. He is 11 points out of that bronze medal position. Well, Cynthia, Kent certainly has benefited from the misses in the rounds, and now we're going into the last round with an 11-point deficit. Is it going to mean that he'll have to just do a tremendous last dive and hope that Southton misses for him to get a bronze medal?
Absolutely. He has to do a great last dive, and Southton has to miss his dive. They're doing the exact same dive, a reverse 1.5 somersault with 3.5 twists, 3.3 degree of difficulty. And if Dimitri Southton from the unified team doesn't miss his dive, he's going to win the bronze medal. And all Kent can do is sit back and wait after he does his dive, because he's the first diver right here. Kent can really put the pressure on Southton by doing one of the best ones of his life. He's received 9s before on the dive, and I would say if he wants to put the pressure on, do that again. I've been in this position before. You really have to just do what you know how to do. You turn your brain off, you go out and you do the dive.
Does he look nervous?
Yes.
Quieting the crowd now. This is where it's going to be determined after this round. Will that be a bronze medal dive?
I don't think so. I think he had trouble on the board work. He stomped the end of the board. I heard that. And all he can do now is wait for Saltine to do his dive. But this isn't one of Kent's best reverse 3.5 twisters. His board work was not smooth and rhythmic. And as he comes around for the dive, he doesn't clean up the dive and go in vertically like he has so many times in the past. It's just a little short of vertical. It's a little shaky going in the water. Scores for the world champion are not probably going to put him in a medal. Saltine would have to miss badly for Kent Ferguson to get a medal.
Well, it has been a day of waiting and seeing for Kent, so now he has just 11 more divers to watch, Lorenzini being one of them.
Now, Lorenzini just did a reverse 1.5 with 2.5 twists, 1 twist less than Kent Ferguson did. Carries 4/10 less degree of difficulty, and that's a big difference in the scores that can count for more than 10 points, even if they receive the same score. And as he comes around and looks at the water, it's a nicely executed dive, but he just lacks tightness in his diving. He lacks stretch throughout his legs. He would probably benefit from some ballet training.
6.5 and 7s to 7.5 were the scores for that dive. And now Joachim Andersen doing his final dive here in the Olympic Games on 3 meter, reverse 1.5 somersault with 3.5 twists, 3.3 degree of difficulty.
We're seeing a lot of reverse twisters in this final round. Twisters are normally safe dives to do in the last round. They're not back or reverse spinning optionals. And back and reverse spinning optionals are difficult because you don't see the water before you get there in the direction that you're spinning. And this is like doing a front or an inward. You see the water before you get to it. You can look at the place where you want to grab your hands and make that hold to go in the water. Joachim Andersen has trouble because he didn't start the twist soon enough to line his body up to go in the water vertically without a splash.
6 and 6.5 and 7s. Low scores, really, at this point of the contest for Joachim. Mark Rourke now, the Canadian diver. Reverse 1.5 somersault, 3.5 twists, 3.3 degree of difficulty.
Same dive. Not the same entry. He missed that because he went over and he didn't square out of the dive. That's the only thing about twisters, is that if you're doing multiple twists, you have to make sure that when you take off from the diving board, you start the twist with your arms and not your body. And he drops one shoulder coming off the board a little bit, so he has trouble squaring the dive out on the bottom. What happens on the takeoff will show up on the bottom of a dive, and there you see that both legs are facing the camera going in the water. That's an over twist.
An over twist and a deficient dive as well, 4.5s to 5s. Now this diver, Michael Murphy, if he gets 7.5s on this reverse 3.5 twister, he could bump Kent further back. So Kent has to pay attention to this dive.
I think he might get 7.5 on that dive. He hesitated a little bit in the twist, but it didn't really show a lack of control. He jumped right up over the springboard. It's a real gutsy move on his last dive. Twisting position is a gymnastic position with his arms in front of him and not up over his shoulders. We just have to see how the judges feel about that, because it's a little bit past vertical. It's not absolutely clean, a rip entry.
And with those scores, it is almost a certainty that Kent will not receive the bronze medal, as Michael Murphy moves ahead of him at this point of the contest. But the attention now turns to Edwin Yunyans for his last dive, a forward 2 1/2 somersault with 1 twist.
I think that's one of the best optionals that Edwin has done, and that's a good place for him to use it last, because he can put the pressure on other divers if he's in contention. At this point, he's not in contention, but he does this dive beautifully because it's a gymnastic move, and Edwin certainly has the strength of a gymnast. And he looks good in the tuck position, although his legs and his knees are apart. He has no trouble making the dive. He goes in the water and cleans this one up. Now, we saw him point his toes as he went in the water there. He needs to work on that throughout the execution of his optional dives.
7, 7.5, and 8 for the diver from the Netherlands. The world champion on 1 meter springboard, and unfortunately for Edwin, 1 meter is not an Olympic event. Dimitri Saucin now doing his final dive. Reverse 1 1/2 somersault, 3 1/2 twists. 6s is all he needed to move ahead of Saucin. 6.5s will move him ahead of Michael Murphy from Australia.
He'll certainly receive that. He was just steady, consistent diving today. Didn't hesitate at all. Beautiful reverse 1 1/2 somersault with 3 1/2 twists. Good twisting position. Nice stretch. The unified divers all have good form in the air. They don't bend their knees, and they keep their legs and their feet stretched, and they have had a lot of ballet training. I think that really benefits them when it comes to their form off the springboard and their control. And I really like the way he performed. He stayed so cool today, but of course, nobody expected him to necessarily be a medal contender.
And with those scores, he is now the favorite to be the bronze medalist here as the rest of the field starts to wind down, and Jorge Mondragon is doing his reverse 2 1/2 somersault pike.
Jorge Mondragon took off from the springboard, and he did the same thing he did in the qualifying rounds yesterday. He arched. I have a feeling that this is a habit. He needs to get rid of this because it eliminates the ability for him to jump up over the springboard. Watch this take off his stomach, and his knees are bent. He goes out with an arch, and he does a great job completing the somersaults and getting the dive down. Goes in vertically, doesn't make a whole lot of splash. You see him grab his hands there just before he went in the water. But the distance from the diving board and that form with an arch really should not net him any more points than this, even though there were some boos here and there. The crowd wanted to see him receive all 8s.
6.5 and 7s, basically. 7.5 from the judges that he kept. Jorge Mondragon now is giving way to Valery Stutsenko, who's doing his final dive.
Nice dive, real steady. Not quite as good as his teammate Saucin. Of course, Stutsenko is not in a position to get a medal at this point. But they both have control on these dives, and I'm impressed with their hurdles, their balance in their hurdle and the takeoff. Very steady. They hold their arms in the hurdle nicely on their reverse takeoff. And as he comes around and looks at the water, he holds his line and straightens out of that pike position, goes in. It's not quite as clean as he can go in the water, but it's still acceptable. Good scores on a 3.5 twist.
Mostly sevens. Alvin Pilat, who at one point in the contest was the leader and had some misfortune in 2 rounds of dives, dropped out of contention and is now completing his effort here with a reverse 1 1/2 somersault, 3 1/2 twists.
Alvin went just a little bit past vertical as he went in the water on that dive. He started to twist a little bit too late off the springboard. The twist and the somersault have to be in conjunction so that the diver may stretch out and rip the entry. Now he should start the twist with his arms a little bit sooner. He started that with his body. You saw him do what looked like a back bend on the board, a lot of arch coming off. He handles the dive well, but he doesn't quite have time to clean up the dive, grab his hands out in front of him a little bit more before he goes in the water.
6 and 6.5 were the scores for disappointed Alvin Pilat. And now Mark Lenzi, and this is what it will take to be a gold medalist. If he gets 6s on this dive, he will put the mathematical impossibility for Ton Leonda to surpass him.
This is his hardest dive.
Gold medal? Did he leave a little door open?
Well, yes. He's going to receive 6s. He's going to receive 6s on this dive. Yes, he is. And I think the judges like the fact that he's doing a reverse 3.5. He may have a little benefit there. He misses the entry on this dive a bit, but the takeoff is so aggressive. It's close to the diving board. It's 3.5 somersaults. It's the hardest dive that a diver can do off the springboard, but watch as he goes in the water. His feet are a little apart, and he certainly doesn't stretch as well as he has been, but I think he's still going to receive 6s because of the dive he's doing. Because of the 3.5 degree of difficulty and the fact that he's doing this dive last, it is very impressive.
There's the gold medalist, and there are the scores. He won't have to wait to Atlanta. Remember, he said, well, if I don't win here, I can always do it in Atlanta. He certainly won't have to do it in Atlanta because he could do it again and be a 2-time gold medalist. Ton Leonda now basically is diving for the silver medal.
And I think that will secure it for him. It was an inward 3.5 somersault tuck. It was the second most difficult dive being done today. It was consistent. He was a little short on the rotations, but he did not crow hop. He did not take an involuntary bounce before he left the springboard. That may be the reason why he's having trouble making the dive. He used to make it so easily, but he's corrected the problem on his takeoff, and it's created a little problem for him in making the somersaults and going in vertically. He doesn't bounce twice. He's keeping his feet together, but his knees are apart as he goes through the air. The judges could see that and deduct a half a point, but it's an acceptable dive, certainly.
And there are the scores for a silver medal in men's 3-meter diving. Goes to Ton Leonda.
For the 3rd time, he receives the silver medal.
84 against Greg Louganis, 88 against Greg Louganis, and now 1992. The Americans still dominate the 3-meter event in men's springboard diving at the Olympic Games. This means that out of the last 17 gold medals attempted by the U.S., they have won 16.
That's right. The only one they didn't win was in 1972. The Soviet diver won the gold medal. Took it away from the Americans for that 1 year.